And it was also in the 10th century, around the time just after the reign of Alfred, that we can be certain that the Somerset landscape was being parcelled out and pieced together in something like its modern form. That villages with nucleated centres and fields stretching around them were replacing the scattered pattern of settlement which had existed to that time. An excellent example of that is West, Middle and East Chinook, which you see there, not far from Yeovil. It's almost certain, and you can see from a map, because it is encompassed by a single circuit of ground, those three parishes, and then you can see that it has been divided up later into three, to create three nucleated settlements with their open fields stretching around them. That was almost certainly an activity of the 10th century, as has been proved archaeologically at Shapley. And so, Somerset. The Anglo-Saxons gave us Somerset through a mixture of conquest and settlement, through a mixture of Christian faith and administrative zeal, a wish, essentially, to place their mark on the landscape, to give it a name. And very nearly all the towns and villages in which we live have the names which the Anglo-Saxons gave to them. What was the landscape which they had thus defined? A landscape, as we've heard already, of extraordinary diversity and richness. Somerset is rightly claimed to be one of the smallest parcels on the planet where you can come across such a diversity of landscape. From the bleak uplands of Exmoor, where farmers scarcely ever reached, to the coastal plain of West Somerset, immensely rich in geology, and the place where the Anglo-Saxon saints first arrived, to the wonderful, more moderate uplands of the Quantocks, where in the land-hungry 12th and 13th centuries farming infiltrated and woodland retreated, to the Somerset Levels, the place where Alfred planned the salvation of his kingdom. And I mustn't forget to mention, because of vision and looking forward, and I've been told to by my colleagues, the attempt, the hope, the ambition to put the Somerset Levels and Moors on the tentative list for World Heritage Site status. That's only the beginning of a process, and one which has already involved a great deal of discussion and consultation with local authorities and partner agencies. But it is an extraordinarily special landscape, and one which deserves to be badged in such a way that both we and visitors to the county and those far away recognise the Somerset Levels and Moors as one of the richest and most special landscapes in the whole of the British Isles. So I hope the SSP may at a future date find some time to consider the idea of World Heritage Site status for the Somerset Levels and Moors. And South Somerset, always the richest landscape for farming, often the most dissident area of the county too. Thomas Gerard in the 1630s said that the farmers had their pockets filled with gold because of the richness of their land. And the Mendips. The Mendips, where Alfred had a royal palace at Cherry. The Mendips filled with that wonderful archaeology representing the lives, the ambitions and the beliefs of people whose world we can scarcely put together. But as I say, Somerset history is a story of interruptions, of crises, of change. Let no one think that it's a comfortable place to pass, because it isn't. It tells us that nothing stays the same. Even the grandest empires fall and fade away. We are overcome by the thing we never thought of. Well, the Anglo-Saxons were overcome by William the Conqueror, and here we see in the Bayeux Tapestry one part of the battle. One thing I'd like to say about the Bayeux Tapestry is that you see King Harold going into battle with a pennant before him, and on that pennant is the Dragon of Wessex. And Somerset, by some strange lucky chance, managed to collar the dragon as its own symbol. And maybe it's time that there was some agreement on what a county flag might look like. I noticed in the paper, probably only the day before yesterday, that Wiltshire has now adopted not very nice flags. They all seem to be stripy. They all look like the flags of places you've never heard of. I think we're very lucky to have such a strong and historically relevant starting point for our consideration of such matters. The Normans came with tremendous strength and organisation. They were a sophisticated people. They made castles at Montacute, at Naroche, and at Dunster to subdue the Anglo-Saxons, and they did that very successfully. And here is Castle Naroche, converted from a prehistoric ringwork into a Norman Motte-and-Bailey castle. And there is Dunster, which William de Mohun, one of the people who fought with the Conqueror, made his stronghold. And there are extraordinary continuities in Somerset history. It's extraordinary to reflect that Lady Gass, who lives at Fairfield and is now the Lord Lieutenant, can trace her ancestry in direct line at Fairfield back to a man called Gosselin, who lived there in the 12th century. I suspect that it would be impossible to do that in any European state. Probably those kinds of continuities simply don't exist elsewhere. They do exist to an extent in Great Britain, because we've never had a revolution which changed things utterly, but they don't exist elsewhere. Villages created in the 10th century, the villages we live in. Towns, chiefly recreated by the Normans in the 12th century and around that period. Here's Taunton, which was laid out in the 12th century in a more centralised plan, and that centralised plan still represents the heart of the town we know today. And the parade was the marketplace that the 12th century created. And Somerset, created as a centralised marketing place, or recreated, because of course Somerset had existed long before, in the 13th century. And the ones that got away. Because these things didn't happen by accident. They required vision, they required a sense of where you wanted to be, but they also required realism. They also required realism that sometimes the hard knocks weren't going to make things possible. And of course I'm quoting here, or paraphrasing, but it's true. Here's Newport, not far from North Curry. Newport, it means the new town. And it was meant to be a thriving, prosperous Taunton, or Bruton, or Frome. But it didn't happen, because the economics weren't right, and Newport now is hardly more than a speck on the map. So some things don't work, however good the idea may have seemed.